Hey, what's up you guys, and welcome back to my channel. It's so great to have you guys. I also wanted to welcome back all of my brand new subscribers and anyone who's randomly coming across this video. It is so great to have you guys. So for today's video, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be covering common care misconceptions when it comes to bearded dragons. Things that I didn't touch in the last misconceptions video, and some of which are in the controversial topics thing, but I've gotten to the point where I'm not really scared to talk about certain debate topics. So let's get to it. Now, before I touch these topics, I do want to cover one huge disclaimer when it comes to bearded dragons, and one of the biggest reasons why there are so many issues when it comes to caring for bearded dragons and debates and this, that, and the third. So, bearded dragons are one of the most durable reptiles you can get. That's why they're also one of the most common. Bearded dragons can live with improper care for years. Heck, they can live with improper care for their whole lifetime. But this is also where surviving and thriving come into play. For example, we can live on junk food. We can live on processed food, junk food, nothing but that. We can drink cola, a little bit of water. We could still live a full life. It's just, of course, we're not going to be as healthy as those that don't eat that way. Also, we're going to end up having health issues later down the road, which will in turn shorten our lifespan. Same with bearded dragons. If you don't give them the proper care, though they're surviving on one type of care, it doesn't mean it's proper. So, with that being said and touched on, let's get to the first topic. Number one is water intake. A lot of people have an issue with water because they expect to see their bearded dragon drink. Why isn't my bearded dragon drinking? How do I get her to drink? Well, the thing is you don't need to see them drink water. The majority of their water should be given from their diet. So if they aren't actively trying to drink water, that's actually a good thing. Dragons will only take in what they need. Granted, when it comes to food, some of them will just keep eating and eating and eating and eating, but when it comes to water, more specifically, they are only going to take what they need. So be sure that you are giving water in their diet from the fruits, veggies, all of that. The greens alone already have a lot of hydration in them. And this is also another reason why we give baths once or twice a week, because it not only cleans them, helps their shedding, but also it can allow them to drink water if they need to. It gives them an open amount of water to drink from. Now, this is especially for people that don't have water bowls in their tank. I don't keep water bowls in my tank, and I haven't in years because they don't need them. And then that'll bring us to number two, which is bathing. Like I said, you only want to do this once or twice a week. Some people have a question on how often do I bathe? Do they really need to get bathed? Some people have the belief that you shouldn't put them in water at all, which I'm not going to touch that one. So when it comes to giving a bath, you only give them a bath once or twice a week, or as frequently as they need cleaned. So if they're running through their poo every single day, you should never submerge your dragon in water, but you can just like have the faucet running real quick, get the toothbrush and just take off that poo real quick. I mean, it's as simple as that. And another thing to be mindful of is when you're filling up the bath, you should make sure that there is no chance of them drowning. They shouldn't be floating in the water. The water should not be coming up to their necks. The water should only be coming right above their feet or up to their stomach max. Now, with that being said, this may be confusing because you've seen videos like this where I have my dragons in tubs that are filled up more. The only times I do this is when they are shedding. Nixie specifically, because she likes to swim and dunk her head and do all of that, and she'll try to get really close and lay down and swim in the water that she can't swim in. So sometimes I will put extra water for her. But regardless of that, I think everyone should just keep the water right above their feet, simply so there's no chance of drowning, there's no chance of aspirating the water. You should also make sure that they are being washed at all times when they are in the water, and you shouldn't be putting them in the bath more than like 15 minutes. That brings us to number three, which is cohabiting. This is one of the big great debates. What is cohabiting? Cohabiting is when you have two or more animals, people, living organisms, whatever, living in the same space, tank, whatever. They are solitary creatures. They don't need friends. They do not get lonely like that. They don't need them. And the reason why this is a big debate and actual issue in the reptile community as a whole is because when you have solitary animals and put them in the same tank, a lot of the times they're going to either injure each other or kill each other because they are fighting for territory. It is survival of the fittest in nature. So it's the same thing. Their whole world is within that tank. So if you put another animal in there, they're going to fight for territory. With that being said, this also may be super confusing to new people that are watching my channel because in the beginning, if you saw my beginning videos, I did cohab. I had Belly and Opie in the same tank. Y'all never met Opie. She had passed away before this channel, which is why I actually started the channel. And I also had cohabbing videos as well for the longest time on this channel, but I took them down because there was too many issues and I didn't want new owners to cohab because they saw me cohabbing. So if you'll notice after those recent videos, I stopped showing them together even though they were together. Now, the reason why I cohabbed in the first place is because I got two bearded dragons that were living in the same tank and had been for years. And though bearded dragons can live in the same tank for years, they can still have issues. With my dragons, I will 100% admit I didn't have issues. Okay, they didn't fight, they didn't bug each other, I didn't have issues. But because Belly was getting ill, I separated them. And guess what? They did perfectly fine separated. I'll admit that I was worried about separating them at first, but they are solitary animals and they do just fine alone. Even if they stop lizarding or stop functioning, they will get back to the groove and they will start doing normal lizard things again. The reason why they're not doing that is because of change. Dragons don't like change, but they do adjust eventually. So even if you have dragons that have been living in the same tank for ages, they can still have issues. I have heard so many stories. The longest I think was dragons living in the same tank for 5 years. And then they eventually just started fighting. So they cannot live in the same tank. And honestly, they can't even see another dragon that's in a tank across the room. You need to have them on top of each other or out of view of the other. Let's get to bugs. I'm not gonna cover all of the lists of things that you can feed them. I already have a whole video on everything you can feed a bearded dragon. It's called Feeding List Video. I'll put the link up here and it'll be in the description. The main things, of course, don't feed wild caught bugs because of things like this. You never know what's in your bugs. They could have a whole parasite in there and then end up killing your dragon. You are what you eat. You don't know what these bugs are eating, which is why you don't give wild caught bugs and you have to feed them bugs that are coming from a reputable breeder or store. Second is no glowing bugs. Fireflies, lightning bugs, anything that glows will kill them within 30 minutes to an hour. So try to keep them away from that. No aggressive bugs. You don't want a bug that can fight your dragon. You also don't want a bug that will bite your dragon to begin with because they can give your dragons infections. If you want to hear a whole story about that, I actually have the whole animation I created on why Belly lost her tail, which the link will be up here and it'll also be in the description. But now that those are out of the way, let's actually get to the controversial bugs that everyone has a whole debate on whether they should feed or not. So that would be mealworms, superworms, waxworms. Mealworms and superworms are very similar. One of them is just bigger than the other and has more of a meat to shell ratio, and that would be superworms. Superworms have more meat than they do shell, which is why supers, I would feed those before you feed mealworms. Mealworms can actually kill your dragon. Yes, a lot of people are like, no, this isn't true, I've done it, my dragon hasn't died. It doesn't mean if you feed one mealworm, your dragon is going to die. That's just not how it works. Issue that you get with mealworms is feeding them to juveniles, specifically because they're small and they got tiny little digestive tracts, and that's a lot of shell and it's hard to digest and it can cause impaction. And if there's so much shell, it could even cut them on the inside. That one is very, very rare and less likely, but it's possible because it happened to me. Be very careful of that. And the way that this happened to me is because I was told that mealworms were a staple. I was an unsuspecting owner. I had no idea. They were still juveniles, and this baby ended up dying because of it. So mealworms are a no. You shouldn't feed them to begin with. And I'm not the only one that will say that for bearded dragons. When it comes to superworms, this is a treat, not a staple. It's not something I feed often. I'll feed it during the summers usually and give them maybe 3 or 4 within the week. That tells you how much I don't feed them. When it comes to waxworms, this one does not harm your dragon. It cannot harm them. It can make them chunky. It can definitely make them gain weight, but that's because they are fatty. They are filled with fat, but they are also filled with some water as well. So waxworms are actually great for rescues because they are filled with fat and water. But the issue with these comes when you feed it as a staple. These are not a staple food. You will have issues like fatty liver disease and things like that. So you definitely don't want to feed these as a staple. These are just a treat. And that brings us to number 5, which is also one of the biggest debates in the reptile community, specifically bearded dragons, and that is UVB. We all have heard the many opinions and, you know, what's right, what's wrong crap. What's a definite fact is that dragons need UVB to function properly. There are no ifs, ands, or buts about that. They need UVB to function properly, stay healthy, and not get things like metabolic bone disease. The biggest issue with this is that pet stores and all of these other brands market incorrect lighting to you. They are marketing those coil bulbs. A lot of people wonder why you can't just get the coil bulb. They make double domes for you so you can have a coil bulb and a heat lamp in the same area on one side of the tank, and then you just have nothing on the other side. I've seen that so many times. The issue with the coil bulbs is that these do not reach your dragon. Those coil bulbs are literally doing nothing for you. The UVB on coil bulbs sits a few inches right under the bulb. That's not sufficient. Do you see how high up this UVB tube light is? That UVB, if it was a coil bulb, would only hit right here. My dragons are like way down here. It's not sufficient. So that's why you need full spectrum lighting. Because the reason why we have the lighting at all is to mimic their natural habitat. In their natural habitat, they have full spectrum lighting. Now, there are some people that say you should have an area where there isn't UVB touching. And they say that because bearded dragons should have a way to get away from the UVB and the heat. But this is also why we have hides. This is why we have areas for them to go under. This is why we have areas for them to get away from the heat. And this is also why we have a temperature gradient. You should have different temperatures throughout your tank. When it comes to UVB, it's the same thing. Where they are in the tank, they're going to hit a different level of UVB and they're going to take in what they need. And a lot of these dragons with the coil bulbs as well, you'll notice that they don't have as much energy. They're lazy. A lot of people were always wondering why Belly Buns was so active. She was running around. I don't understand how your dragon's so active. But both of my dragons are active because they have proper lighting, because they have proper husbandry, and because they have the proper diet. Now, when it comes to the tube lights, there's a difference between the T5 and the T8. T8s were the ones that go on the inside of the tank and are mounted inside the tank because they aren't as strong. T5s are mounted above the screen of the tank or placed on top of it. Some people that have had a T5 and tried to mount it inside the tank have had issues. Their dragon will be laying in one spot with their eyes closed. This is because there's too much UVB. There is such thing as too much UVB. They will stop functioning and it literally zaps all of their energy and it makes them not feel good. So you really need to be mindful about how far away you are putting that UVB. And that brings us to the last and final misconception, and that is the great substrate debate. So when the average person thinks about bearded dragons, or honestly reptiles in general, they generally think desert area, desert hot area, which equals sand. When it comes to bearded dragons more specifically, they think sand as well because you think of Australia and the Australian arid zone, which is where the central bearded dragon actually originates, Cohabiting. And that is actually the most commonly sold bearded dragon in the reptile community. But that's not the only type. There are other types, and those other types live on different substrates. So that is all something to keep in mind. Now, I've touched on this topic a few times over the years on this channel, but you'll have a lot of instances like this little clip right here where I said that I'm just neutral and it's okay to do whatever. No, it's not okay to do whatever. I was saying that because I did not want to start a controversy or have a lot of hate on the channel because I was new. But now that I've been doing this a while, I just don't care. So the issue with sand and using sand is the fact that there is an ongoing problem in the bearded dragon community where dragons are dying from impaction of ingesting sand. Now, these impactions don't always cause death, but without surgery, they do. And of course, there's been many debates on the causes and the fixes of this issue, but the fact of the matter is that there's an issue and dragons are dying from it. And again, it's not just dragons. Leopard geckos, for example, also have this issue in that community as well. Please do not put your leopard gecko on sand. And this issue has become so relevant that even specialists have started to tell you that you shouldn't put sand in the tank. I'm also aware that there are places that sell Australian red sand. When you actually look at the Australian arid zone, the soil was tested. It isn't just dirt. That soil consists of soil, rocks, slate, and sand, red Australian sand. Now, there are some people that actually sell this red Australian sand. I don't know where you would find that. I haven't been too inclined to get it, so I can't say anything about that. Regardless of that, there's just more issues opposed to the impaction that you can have as well. And bacteria is one big one. Worms, just all sorts of illnesses you can get from not having clean surroundings, because a lot of people when they get sand, they don't change it out, or they'll just poop or scoop it a little bit, but that bacteria is still spreading throughout the sand, and it's just nothing but a bacteria nastiness. If you really want to have loose substrate and you want to give your dragon that nourishment, just create a bioactive setup. I mean, this is loose substrate, they can dig in it, and it cleans itself. The only thing is you have to set it up correctly. And if you're going to do this, I 100% hands down recommend the Bio Dude. Alright, you guys, so that's all I have for you. So if you're still watching, be sure to stay tuned to the end for extra lizard footage and bloopers. Also, be sure to like this video, share this video, subscribe if you haven't already. Be sure to turn on the notification bell for this channel and my second channel, Alex's Random Entertainment. Just be mindful that this channel is not child friendly. It is also not lizard related. It is an animation channel that is random entertainment. So do keep that in mind if you're going to go check it out. Also, be sure to check out my website at www.lizardguru.com for things for you and your lizard that you won't find anywhere else. And as always, from my family to yours, I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful week. Mwah! So, if you're still watching, be sure to stay tuned.